right, welcome back to the Inner Headspace podcast. This is episode 10 already, which is insane because I thought we were on episode 9 when I was setting up the podcast stuff, and I went to go add the file, and it was episode 10, and I was like, damn. Which means I think it's about time I actually shout out our podcast on my main Instagram account, because I teased it right when we filmed the first episode, and then I ghosted and didn't actually make the announcement other than posting on my story. So I think I'll make an actual post. I was going to do it like a week ago, but I was like, we're so close to episode 10, so I'll just do it at episode 10. But
I'm back.
Jared's back.
I'm back.
I'm no longer awkward and lonely, so
I'm here.
we're doing good. And I'm going to ask Jared his point of view on a topic I touched on last week. And it wasn't the main topic. The main topic last week was about change.
Too hard.
But the one that I was really wanting to talk about was the innate human desire to understand everything. And like, it's like a fact of nature. Like that's why we're so interested in knowing how the universe became to be, and traveling in space and all these sciences. I feel like it's a driving force of like needing to understand, and what we don't understand scares us.
Yeah. First off, when you're talking about the pursuit of knowledge,
Yes.
there's two magic cards that came to mind. One called Thirst for Knowledge, and I love the flavor text on them.
Do you have it memorized?
I think I have the Thirst of Knowledge one. Actually, I don't have the flavor. No, I don't.
Here, you know what? I'll look it up. You keep talking.
And it's just a guy drinking God knows what, and it talks about like the serum or something, pursuit of higher knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's another one that I like called Rush of Knowledge.
Okay.
I like that art more, and that's just what I thought of because
When I said that.
yeah, I love magic card art because
Knowledge pool, price of knowledge, rush of knowledge.
Rush of Knowledge is one I just talked about, where the guy's like, yeah, you know,
his
it
face
is.
is getting blasted off. That's
I
hilarious.
love it.
Limitless power is glorious until you gain limitless understanding.
Isn't this the best shit
That's
ever?
insane.
Like,
That's actually hilarious. Thirst for knowledge. Here we go. To truly know something, you must become it. The trick is to not lose yourself in the process.
dude, that's what I just love about fucking
Damn,
magic
that's
flavor.
relatable.
I just love the magic flavor text because
Dude.
I was like, no other fucking card game does it like that. I'm like, bro, that hit
The
different.
little thing about Magic is like their card art and their lore is pretty sick. Like, I'm barely even into it, but like it helps when it's aesthetically extremely pleasing as well. So it's like, cool, I want to learn how to play this new fun game, and these look really pleasing, and I'm totally down to collect them, kind of thing.
Yeah, like what I like about Magic more compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, which is what I play.
Mhm.
From what I understand, Yu-Gi-Oh, all the art is done by like one person or one studio, so the art style is very consistent. It's the same.
Oh, okay.
But with Magic, it's different authors, and they put on the card who drew this one and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And so there's a huge variety in Magic, which is why I just like that art so much, because there's so much more variety.
Damn.
But to get back to your question about
Understanding.
the pursuit of knowledge,
Yes.
higher understanding,
Limitless understanding.
the rush of knowledge. That's what I want when I, some psilocybin, But anyways,
You want limitless understanding?
Get ahead of myself here. Get
Yeah.
ahead of myself here.
We have yet to cross that bridge.
But okay, I am by no means a neurologist, a chemist, a biologist. But when you ask that question, I think of another crazy thing about how we work as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
This might have something to do with dopamine, though. I'm not sure. But anyways, like, what I find fascinating about the human mind is our ability to adapt. I think that's a good word to put it.
Yes.
For example, you know, a human being could go through something tragic, but given some time,
Mm-hmm.
they can, in a sense, move on from it.
Right. And take from it.
Yes. And they could think about it,
Yes.
but it's not the same reaction as it was when it first happened. Because if every time you thought about X thought and it was like the exact same thing that you felt before, you fucking wouldn't get anything done.
Well, and that's exactly what PTSD is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's even weird stuff. What do they call the people that work at morgues? I don't know what they're called, but
Oh, I have no idea.
like that job's also weird.
Morticians.
Morticians.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what. I didn't know that, and then I did all of a sudden.
See, like, I'll talk about that too.
Okay.
That job in itself weird because they deal with dead people every fucking day,
Oh yeah.
and it's just like, and then they get fucking used to it, and it's like, oh
Right.
yeah, because I forgot, I listened to someone who worked at a morgue, and they talked about their first day. It was just weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like learning
Just
the
seeing
ropes,
dead
like
people.
learning the
Yeah.
ropes is like, don't be freaked out. And it started by like touching it. It's like that person's actually dead.
Ugh.
And then it's they get used to it. It's like, it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
a pattern because that's their job. They do
Yeah.
it, 5 times a week. And then like they got into more graphic stuff where, I think the guy said the most gruesome one was like, it's like some woman and their daughter got in a car wreck with like a drunk guy, and he's sitting there picking up their body parts and putting them in a bag. But he's talking about it, he's like,
Oh.
he's just like, yeah, it's fucked up, but it's my job. I was
Well,
like,
it's
like-
crazy. Okay, I see what you mean by like the ability to adapt to these like
yeah,
potentially traumatizing situations.
yeah. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
that's quite interesting how your brain does that. Because
Interesting.
this guy I really like, I think his name Andrew Huberman. He's a neurologist, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to him sometimes, and he talks about how crazy our brain is. I'm trying to think of like our brain is just so versatile. That's a good word to label it. It's very versatile.
Yes.
You could throw it in a lot of different situations, and it just does its thing.
Right.
And he started. I heard him talk about how actually like social media could be fucking with our brain in the sense of what did he say? It had something to do. Oh, there was an experiment done where this one dude just said, "Hey, fucking like zap parts of my brain and see what happens." And so they're like, "Oh, like they zap this part, he's horny. They zap this part, he's happy. They zap this part, he's drunk."
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And he said the one he liked the most was when they would zap him and he'd get a little bit angry and frustrated. And it was like, why the fuck would you like being angry? Yeah.
Do it again.
Because it's like, well, wouldn't you want to be drunk? Would you want to be horny? Would you want to be happy?
Yeah.
Like out of all
the positive emotions.
out of all of the options you could have picked from, you picked the one where it's like, that's kind of miserable. Why would you pick that? And so he was kind of relating it to like how we have constant dopamine, very low constant dopamine
Yes.
from social media, kind of being like, let's just say you start with $1,000 and you spend $5 every time on that like Instagram post or however many minutes long, like it adds up over time to equal the amount of dopamine, but it was just so spread thin. And he was relating it to how our ancestors would come across things where you were doing whatever X was. There was some pushback, the anger, the frustration.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you completed it, you would get that dopamine, which could be equal to the $1,000. But rather than receiving it $5 at a time, you got it all at once.
Yes.
And you're just like, whoa. Because I think a lot of people, if you gave someone $1,000 immediately, they would be more ecstatic rather than, okay, I'll give you $1,000, but it'll be $5 every day.
Oh yeah,
They'll be like, oh, whatever.
thanks.
And so now going back to why we want to learn, why we want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
What I think a big reason on why we strive for something greater than we currently are is because, one, we already know what we're doing is inadequate.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people, majority of people, could look at themselves and be like, I could be doing the best thing for me, but instead I'm doing this.
The easiest thing.
Even in ethics, you get into some theories about that, where the individual believes like it's been a while since I've been in my ethics class, but there's like there's two groups of people. There's one where smoking is bad and smoking is good. It's like, well, how can smoking be good for the person?
Right.
Well, smoking could be good for the person if what you are prioritizing are their needs. And so if the need is, hey, I need my goddamn nicotine, you give them their nicotine. But on the flip side, you could also view it as, all right, yeah, you could have that nicotine, but that's going to fuck you over later.
Right.
And I think logically everyone would say, oh, the long-term person makes the most sense. But in our own way, we all seem to take part in both parties once in a while.
I feel like we tend to hold other people to a higher standard than we hold ourselves. And it's like so easy to tell someone, well, you should be doing this because it's the healthy thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And then you look at them and they're not holding themselves nearly to as high of a standard. And there's like obviously some hypocrisy going around where it's like, yeah, maybe I'm not smoking, but I'm doing this other thing that's equally as bad. Or like
I'm smoking cigarettes and vaping.
Or I don't know. I don't have an example, but doing something just as bad for me in the long run that is seemingly okay because I'm doing it kind of thing.
Yeah, and that I don't have a solution. Like, I find standards difficult.
Yeah.
Because like if you try to hold other people to your standards, it doesn't really work out. Maybe your standards compared to the guy next to you are too low or too high. Mm-hmm. It's too wishy-washy. It's kind of why I like religion in this sense, is that there's they got their rules and there's their universal set of standards where it's like, at least do that type of deal to have some sort of expectation. But even so, I understand that, what if your set of rules aren't the best? For example, it doesn't sound as crazy if I were to be like, in the Middle East, I know that they don't like gay people, but to them, that's just kind of their standard. Or it's like, that's just how they go about it.
It's part of the culture. Whether you see that as an excuse or not, it's part of the culture. It's part of what you're saying. It's part of the standard of the way people are viewed socially.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, religion gives basically a guideline, and gives you this ability to know. It teaches you to recognize right from wrong, whether or not those things are actually right and wrong. It teaches you the concept of that.
Yeah, I'm not even saying that you need religion. I just use an example. For me, like, both my parents are somewhat religious, but they never. I basically grew up non-religious, essentially. My parents never pushed on me, but if I had a question about God, my dad would say something.
Right.
And that was the end of it. And this gets more into like a cultural thing where, like locally around me, well, there's still people locally around me where I'm just like, what the hell's wrong with you? but, you know, like I would say locally, you know, a lot of people I went to school with weren't raised on religion whatsoever.
No.
And I'd say we turned out just fine, in my opinion.
Yes.
But the reason why I used religion for the example is, in my opinion, I don't think it's a good idea to throw gay people off buildings and kill them.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty solid opinion.
And so that's why, you know, I could see, and I'm not shitting on religion, you know, I see how the positives could come from it, community building and whatnot. But I also see the negative where if there's a flaw in it in the first place, like, there's going to be flaws in everything.
Yeah.
But you could see how dangerous it can be when the flaws happen, because then, you know, people are going to be doing something wrong. And then, you know, a couple generations later, they'll be like, why the fuck were they doing that?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, they thought they were doing the right thing, you know?
And I think it's hard with religion specifically because I think the biggest controversy, I guess you could say, is the influence that most religions have, because by nature, they're a congregation of people who believe in the same thing. And so if that one belief is wrong, it affects such a vast amount of people that to non-religious people that gives them an image of like negativity or bad, even though there's plenty of good things, there's plenty of bad things for all belief types. And I'd say even not believing in anything is still a religion, because in my mind, religion and belief are one and the same. And if you believe one thing, you're treating it like your religion. And I don't think that's super far off to say. I mean, yes, religion technically and specifically is what it is now, but for all intents and purposes, we all treat our beliefs as truths.
Yeah. I also want to like, not everyone in the Middle East throws gays off buildings. It's just extremists that truly believe in their religion will do that.
And believe they need to enforce the will.
Divine command theory.
Yes. See, there you go. We're always referencing back.
But to go back to why we thirst for knowledge, I think a big part of it comes back to we know the flaws that we have, and depending on the severity of it, it could even be severe and people could be like, oh, whatever. But there is that innate self-fulfillment when you're able to do X for yourself, right, and reap some sort of positive benefit from it.
Correct.
And also, there is another innate thing about it where when you think you're doing the best thing, like, what else could you possibly do? Because that's quite literally, to your current knowledge, the best thing you could be doing.
Exactly.
Whether it be like working out or eating the right foods for you. Like, in a sense, it's like kind of that's the top of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the best that you could be doing for whatever it is you are doing.
Correct. Yeah.
And in terms of comparison, why, again, I believe we seek to be better. In terms of like a competitive viewpoint, you don't want to be a loser in this sense.
Everybody hates losing.
Yes.
Yep.
But, you know, the reality is, though, like, everyone can't be winners is the part.
Yep.
And so, and I truly believe competition is good.
Yep.
Although I understand, like, being the loser does suck.
Yep.
I understand that. But
boy, do we understand that.
Yeah. If you didn't have competition, then you wouldn't have a reason to strive and be better. Yeah. If everything capped out at one point, it's like, well, what's the point now?
And that's literally the point of the dopamine in our system, is to reward us for winning.
Yes.
Like, whether it be against ourselves or against other people or obstacles in general, it's the entire point of us having dopamine is to give us a chemical reward system, so we have a will to live.
Yeah, and this is more random. Like I remember Huberman was talking about dopamine, and he was just talking about how ancient dopamine is, and like it's just existed for such a long time through like other animals or whatever. I guess Mother Nature. It's just a really old system that's just super effective. It makes sense, you know. You do something good, you get reward, you want to do it again.
Yep,
that's good. But as Hoberman pointed it out, you know, it could be a problem when that gets exploited and
it's
you start
interesting.
fucking with it.
Yeah, like what you were saying about social media is like there's things now called dopamine cleanses where like people recognize that they become so reliant on these constant dopamine hits that they have to like separate themselves from all of it just to like, because they go numb and then they get depressed. And I've been there, like having that feeling of
nothing matters.
Yeah,
literally.
Everything is going well.
Yep.
And that's depressing. And it's such a weird concept that like I'm not feeling any stress and everything's going great.
Boring.
I'm sad.
Boring.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. I don't know if I actually talked about this. I talked to you about it, but I don't know. Like, popular saying that, and I like it a lot more. The path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Oh, yeah.
I was listening to a video about hell, and from where I am, I grew up with more of like a Christian hell where it's like, you don't want to go there.
Oh, yeah. It's like the worst possible thing imaginable.
Yeah. It's like, that's damnation. You don't want none of that.
Yes.
But what I found crazy about it is the guy started he started talking about different cultures and how they viewed hell. And so again, I got this like stereotypical Christian one where you're sitting there stuck underground, burning for eternity, and the devil's sitting over you like laughing. Right. Like as simple as it gets. And then you got the variations where I talked about Halloween, kind of the whole 7 sins,
and different layers.
Yeah, and then like Dante's Inferno, where he talks about the rings of hell and whatnot, and each ring having its own little thing based off of what you did in life.
Right.
I forget the cultures, but one of them was like the complete 180 where it was just cold. And that was it was just fucking cold as shit. And you're just freezing your ass off. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the whole point of the video was talking about the common theme that all these places had. Yeah. Or all these cultures had that are geographically all over the world. The common theme that hell is the idea was just pain. That was the common theme with all of them. It was to bring pain. Right. And the guy talked about it and he said, well, you know, as you just said, when everything's going well, life's not the best. Yeah. You know, it kind of turns into that, you know, you can't have happiness if there's no sadness. Because if there was
a dichotomy.
Yeah, if there was just happiness, then that would just be that one thing. Yeah. And then you wouldn't be happy.
It's all relative.
Yeah. And so what I liked about his take on hell was, you know, rather than viewing it as your eternal damnation, it was more of pain, accepting it, growing from it, learning from it. Yeah. Rather than, and I would say this is quite common, at least maybe in America. Yeah. Pain is not a good thing.
You know what's funny is this is exactly the topic I touched on last week by myself.
I'll be honest, I didn't listen to it.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I think it's kind of funny that like our minds went to the same place as far as this whole conversation goes. And I just thought that was interesting.
This is where, with that kind of thought, I have to disagree because I believe that the pain can be made good of if you make the most of it.
And you get the best thing you can do in that situation is try to get something out of it, because it's better than getting nothing out of it.
Yeah, and I could say the exact same. Like, you could argue how great the pain is because that's the time to grow. But I understand there's also the argument for how great the happiness is. But you could also take your happiness for granted. So, as soon as you get whatever the happiness is, rather than enjoying it in the moment, maybe your next goal is, I got to try to get that again.
You just move on to the next thing.
And you try to move on to the next thing rather than living in the moment and trying to fully embrace what is happening. But instead, you're like, okay, let's try to move on to the next thing. Kind of like on the flip side, like you could be in pain and you could do, quote unquote, the wrong thing and not make the most of it and make the worst out of it and have it be a negative thing.
Right.
So
what I think is interesting about what you're talking about there's a commonality when it comes to hell across the world. But I also think it's interesting. The first thing that came to my mind when you started bringing that up was like how the Egyptians viewed it, which was you want to get to the afterlife. You want to keep living and go on to the next phase of existence, which was essentially like the punishment would have been your body gets destroyed and you can't make it to the afterlife, or you've committed too much sin and you're forced to roam the earth by yourself as a ghost or a spirit or whatever. And like, it's the
Egyptians were out of their time, man.
Dude, I just think that's a very peaceful way to think about it. Like, live your life to the fullest now. That way, when you get to the next life, you're starting off on the right foot. And then, like, if you do bad, then you're not accepted into the next life because you ruined your chance. And it's just a really interesting take on it because, like you were saying, there's so many instances of it being such a horrible, negative thing to die or to do wrong and then die. And, I mean, yes, there's still that, I guess, that lesson of morality with the Egyptian way of thinking, but it's a lot less gruesome and more so like genuine, like, man, I don't want to be alone.
Yeah. So, what I like about that, so about the whole death thing, I would definitely say in our culture, it's a very bad thing to die. No one wants to die.
Right.
And no one wants to accept that thought. I'd say that's understandable.
Yeah. It's scary. I even struggle with that. Like, not saying like I struggle with thinking about dying. It's just,
that's a big thing.
It's a terrifying thought because I feel like in my head, I've got so many things that I'm looking forward to that like, I'm too young. I don't want to think about that. Like, that's where my fear comes from. I'm not ready yet. You know?
This is how I view it. And I came across the thought recently. At least us in America, most Americans, I'd assume, you view life as the beautiful thing and death as the ugly thing.
Yes.
And I would imagine that's not just us. I would think other countries and cultures would view it the same way.
Yeah.
Depending on how you view it, which is again funny. There's an Alan Watts lecture where he was at some dinner party and the hostess like went around talking about death.
Yeah.
And it came to this old general guy and he's like, oh, you go to heaven, you'll live happily ever after. But I don't want to talk about such sad things. And it's just funny because he just talked about this everlasting happy ending.
Yeah.
But then he's like,
but that's sad.
He's like, oh, like maybe there's some doubts sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just saying that to cope. Who knows? But it's quite ironic to say those words and then just be like, let's move on. I don't want to think about.
I don't want to think about going to heaven.
Yeah. I don't want to think about moving on to the next stage in life. The Egyptian,
and that feeds into. I was talking about change and how hard but necessary change is to deal with, and how it's like it can destroy everything you know, but at the same time, it gives way for a bunch of new things in your life, and like how it's important to understand the ebb and flow of being sad about change, but also accepting it and utilizing it to make yourself happier again. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, so back to still like the death concept.
Yep.
Back to life is beautiful, death is ugly.
Yes.
To an extent, I agree with that. You know, people cry when a child is born into this life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, look, it's this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at it, like, what do you see? It's like, well, it's this completely defenseless thing.
Yeah.
But also, when you look at it, it's almost like this thing has unlimited potentiality. It's limitless in a sense, because like this child can grow up to be God knows what.
Oh yeah.
It could be the next Nikola Tesla. It could be the next. It could be so much, and I would say that is beautiful in that sense.
Yes.
Because of what it's capable of. And then I would say on the flip side, when you're getting so old to the point where you're losing your function,
Yep.
you're in a lot of pain, you got like degenerative arthritis, you're getting all this pain, your spine there's something wrong with your spine.
Yeah.
You can't walk properly anymore. Now
Your
you need a
body's
wheelchair.
degrading. Yeah.
And now it's like, can you look at me and still say life is beautiful when you're seeing the end of it?
When it turned me into this, essentially. Yes. Yeah.
And then can you still say it when, to try to keep the life going, you hook them up to the machines?
Is that even life?
And then you got to pump them full of morphine or whatever painkillers because of how much pain they're in.
Yeah.
And so then it makes you think, it's like, well, is the life so beautiful? And then it's like, well, what's the other option? It's like, well, remember that thing we called ugly or death? Funny how
it's
that
all of a sudden
looks more
better.
beautiful than the current life that you're living.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was funny because
it's almost ironic.
It is ironic.
Yeah.
Because I would almost always view death as the bad thing, life is the good thing.
Right.
But then when you see the bad side of life, it's like, oh, maybe death is actually the best thing now. That's better than living.
Right. And I think that in itself can be its own lesson, a super broad lesson of like, even something as valuable and unique and one of a kind life is, and being given life, even that undisputably positive thing can be worse than death. The fact that life can be so bad is almost comforting, that like eventually you're going to come to peace with it. Like eventually I'm going to get to a point in my life where I'm like, I feel satisfied and fulfilled.
Time to head out.
Where I can just let go. But I think the scariest part wraps back around to our fact that we don't understand what happens when you die. We don't know. We have our beliefs and we have our theories and we have our speculation, but we literally, we will never know until we experience it ourselves. And I think that's the terrifying part, is it's the one constant thing in life, which isn't even life, that we can't understand and we never will understand.
Yes.
And that's innately terrifying to a human brain.
Yeah, and one thing I was always interested, so, Alan Watts would always talk about it. He like talk about the Buddha, and he would always talk about like letting go, relaxing, and all that in terms of the death.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you say it's like, oh, that sounds wise, blah, blah, blah. No one else really saying that, if you want to view it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you reason to it, or depending on how you look at it, it really made sense then when I viewed it through the eyes of, oh, clinging on to that life, that is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, because it's not only affecting you, because like,
right,
because
it puts so much strain on everybody around you.
like from what I understand, like one, if you're not on the pain meds, you're just in constant pain.
Yes.
Two, if you're on the pain meds, the pain's still there, but the medicine's just like fucking with your head type of deal.
And you're not even you anymore.
And that is,
Yeah.
Yes, it certainly changes you.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if what Alan Watts would always preach is just letting go, because like while you're in either of those states, like with drugs or without drugs, if you have a loved one, a family member, friends, whatever it is, even a dog, they're just going to be like, I just know, like, it's like, oh, this is bad. And then for whoever entity to sit there and just not do anything about it, because there's nothing you could do about it.
Right.
And then now you feel shitty. So it's like, not only is it affecting you, it's affecting whatever's around you.
Yes. And everybody that cares.
Yes. It's like, oh, now you just like double whammied.
Yeah. And I think what's fascinating, going back to our topic of religion, I can see extreme value in the intention of religion, as far as it gives us a comfort because we feel that we understand what's happening. And depending on your belief system, all of them have something that explains the beginning of life and the end of life. And I think that's what gives so much comfort, and that's why religion is so natural in humans, is because, like I was saying, we need to understand, but when there's something we can't possibly hope to understand, we still find a way to understand and make peace with it. And that goes back to your adaptability point, where if all humans worried about was like death and fear of death and like what's at the end, like what, like just in constant fear, we wouldn't survive. But like we're able to either ignore it, not care so much about it, or come up with explanations for it that give us peace of mind, whether it be if you do good in life, you're going to die and be in a happy place for eternity. Or if you do bad in life, you're going to have an existence of damnation. And it's like, it's doing two things. It's one, giving you a certainty in life, and it's also giving you a moral compass and telling you, don't do this or you'll go to hell. Do this and you'll go to heaven. And it's like, it puts you on like such a defined path that then you start there, and then either you stick to it your whole life, or especially increasingly in modern times, people tend to kind of stray off. Not always completely, but they tend to stray off and make their own life decisions. But they made it through the early years or whatever hard times, because people turn to religion in hard times too, because it's such an effective way and such a natural way for us to
it's almost like to
heal.
It's I think I'll call it a thought process. A coping mechanism maybe is a good word.
Yeah,
it's certainly effective when whatever tragic thing's happening.
Yep.
Like, to think of religion, I think would alleviate at least some amount of pain. Right. Whereas, if you were to take someone with no beliefs, might be a bit heavy, because it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ, like
you can't figure out a way to comprehend it.
Yeah, it's like I would say the weight load's a bit more heavy with the no belief, and you could even still pull out.
Yeah,
because then we go back to the pain. You could pull out, let's just say the guy with no beliefs, he could pull out, hey, I just had this moment of heaviness,
this tragedy, or
where it's like, man, life is valuable, the time is valuable, I gotta go, and
it's a motivator,
and it could be a motivator. Or again, on the flip side, you could get completely crushed by it.
It could be a depressant,
and it could fuck you for X amount of time.
And it could also, and another side to that, and this is why I believe that religion and belief systems, obviously they're the same because religion is a form of belief system, but I think all of it is one and the same, as far as like, atheism or agnostic or Christian or Muslim, which is part of Christianity. Like any of these, the thing is, if you're like agnostic or you're atheist or whatever, you don't believe in a higher power or you don't know there's a higher power, then you could still cope fine in traumatic situations or tragic situations, I should say, because at that point, if your belief system is death happens, that's a part of my life and it's a part of everybody's life, I'm going to accept that. That could just be the way they deal with it and be like, it's inevitable. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
But that could come off as callous or numb to people who think in different ways, such as in religion, it's a very emotional connection and very community based. But then there's people who are like, and I think I'd fit myself in this category where when tragedy does strike, I'm very much in the belief of feeling and accepting your emotion, not pushing away the emotion, and then overcoming that hill and then growing from it and moving on. So it's a much more drawn out process. It's not like, oh, okay, well, he passed away, but I'm okay now. It's like I would definitely be messed up for like a week or two or a month, and then eventually get back on your feet and then keep moving forward. And I think that if that's an example of anything, it's an example of no religion while utilizing methods learned from religion, I guess, where like it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of my world or my life. And something that I liked, I don't even know where I heard it, but it's like celebrate, like, yes, spend a couple days mourning, but then celebrate the life that they had and be grateful for the impact that person left, rather than be so sad that they're gone that you're going to forget about so many of the positive things that they left.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that's also so incredibly difficult to do in the moment, which is why I don't think it's feasible to expect that from anybody. When something hits in the moment, we have a gut reaction. Like, there's no sense in fighting your gut reaction. Just feel it, understand why you're feeling it, don't confuse yourself, and it all comes down to self-reflection, I think.
Yeah. What I liked about what you were talking about earlier about the whole death, we were just talking about death, but like coping with it.
Yeah.
One thing, I think it was like Socrates or Aristotle. One of them said, death smiles at us all. The only thing a man can do is smile back. It's all you can do.
Damn.
And I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And I'll find it an appropriate quote.
I like that. Yeah.
And then, okay, real quick sidetracked.
Yep.
About your time traveling thing. If I were to go back, I'd definitely go with the Greeks. I would love to sip wine with them. Wear a white
wine
bed sheet.
crushed by dirty feet.
Yep. Wear a white bed sheet. Sit out in the sun and be like, "This is it."
Eating some olives.
Yep.
Participate in the Olympics, maybe.
Yep.
Damn.
But anyways, going back to the adaptability.
Oh yeah,
Jordan Peterson mentioned it, and he said, like, he called it a monster, and he said, you got to be something, for a human to lose their mother and at some point just move on from it.
Yeah.
Because if you were never to move on from it, you'd just be a complete mess of yourself.
Right.
But it would seem most people, they recover from it and they go on with life when their mother died.
Yeah.
And I would say it's quite a heavy thing to do.
I think people underestimate the strength of the human mind. And I've said this before, but I think our biggest weakness is also our biggest strength, which is our capacity for emotion. And like, our capacity for emotion is what causes us to have such deep feelings when someone passes, but it also allows us to overcome that as well. So with the lowest lows, you get the highest highs.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, with an animal, there are some animals that like they face trauma, they go into a deep depression, and then they die. And yes, that can happen to humans, but those are specific circumstances with other factors, such as maybe this person has never gotten help or support, or maybe this person has some other reason for them reacting this way, or all of these things. Like there's people who go through literally nothing but hell their whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still kicking. Like they're still like, even in countries where they don't have access to all of the things we do in a first world country, they deal with diseases and famine and extreme weather without proper protection from it. And they're just like, I love life. Like,
yeah.
I think that's like a testament to like, and that I know everyone uses that example, like be grateful for what you have. But I think it's interesting that like, look at that and be like, that's cool because we're all the same species.
Yeah, what I really liked, I'm going to relate this to Blood of Zeus.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Which is a
Netflix.
a Netflix anime about Greek mythology. Just for some context,
You got to watch it.
I have to watch it. Yes, I'm excited.
Okay. One of my favorite like, I love Hermes in that. Such a homie. I won't say, like, one of my favorite parts is, like, someone died,
Mm-hmm.
and Hermes escorted them to who's the boatman? What's
Charon.
Charon?
Yeah.
Oh, Charon's coin, yeah.
Yeah.
And Hermes brought with him a coin to give to Charon.
Ah, look at that.
And he said, the coin was representing Zeus. And he said, guarantee this person safe passage or the thunder will rain on you.
Oh my god.
I was like, holy fuck, I got goosebumps right now. I got goosebumps when Hermes said
Damn, dude.
But one thing I loved that Zeus was teaching his son,
Mm-hmm.
Heron,
Yeah.
was he kept telling him to look inward. And like the crazy thing about strength, you know, when you say strength,
Mm-hmm.
I think a reasonable thought would be physical strength.
Yes.
But my God, is there something to look inward?
Oh, yes.
And Zeus was trying to get that across to Heron,
Mm-hmm.
because Heron would get very frustrated and get angry, and would then try to use that anger. And it sounds like fucking Star Wars now. He would try to use this anger.
Always with the Star Wars.
He would try to use this anger and find strength from it, but he would fail.
Continue, because I have definitely a thought on that.
And so Zeus kept telling him, he's like, you gotta let go. And he said, you're not getting strength from this anger. And then he said, like, even Hercules in one of his labors, he had to look inward. Even though he was so powerful and strong, he had to look inward for strength.
See, that's
and Zeus,
the beauty behind these religious tales and tales of like lessons that come from this is like so important for people to know this, I feel.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because this stuff's existed for forever.
Yeah.
And it's just like we come across it, like some dude
Yeah.
that lived thousands is thousands right?
Yeah, because it was
BC, because this is before Christ,
before
definitely.
Christianity was even a thing.
So thousands of years before us, they had parts of this figured out already.
Oh yeah.
Which is I find crazy. But like, okay, what I loved about Zeus in it, that he told Heron, because again Heron kept relying on the anger to try to get strength from it, and then Zeus showed him. He's like, you think it gives you strength, but you don't even know what true strength is.
Oh, shit.
And then used his lightning.
Oh my god.
And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this is amazing.
Damn.
Trey, this show is phenomenal.
Okay, I really gotta watch it.
Yeah, like it's just
That sounds amazing.
Zeus was fucking amazing in it.
So
Like,
what I was gonna say about that is, I think the thing Heron's doing is very much, and I'm speaking as someone I feel can definitely speak on this matter as a male. males in America specifically, because I
Mhm.
definitely know it's different in other countries,
Yeah.
but culturally in America, and I think I've said this before, like I've gone on this rant a little bit before, males are supposed to be strong and sturdy and carry all this weight and be the leader and not show any
No
form
weakness.
of weakness, quote
Mhm.
unquote. But that often translates into when the only emotion males can tend to convey is anger. And then they think,
True.
oh, well, that's the thing I'm good at. And then they misconceive this anger as some sort of strength, and they do exactly that. And they think, oh, well, when I'm angry, I'm stronger, which means I can deal with more when I'm angry. And it causes all of this confusion in your head, and then you don't even understand yourself and your own feelings. And then it makes you a weaker person overall, and it makes everything in life harder.
Yeah, like I wanted to. So going back to pain, then
Yeah.
from the like, it seems like there's kind of two walks in life on it. Like with the pain, you can like derive the anger from it
Yep.
and use that as your motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see on the flip side, that seems the harder thing to do. Like in the pain, being calm, gaining clarity from it, and using that. Which
And processing. Everybody's angry. That's
Yep.
that's not the
That's
the
true.
point. Isn't don't get angry. The point is how you interact with your own emotions. And I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest thing. That's literally the one lesson that if I were to like have one last thing to say before I die to anybody was like, the most important thing you should do is understand yourself above anybody else, and know why you're feeling things, know why you're reacting certain ways. And I've said this before, know why you're doing something in life, where you are headed in life, and how what you're doing affects the people around you. And then if
Yeah.
everybody does that, they'll link together, and then it'll be this constant positive, well, not fully positive because nothing's fully positive, but this mostly positive feedback loop where I'm watching out for myself and making sure I'm not hurting people around me, and they're watching out for themselves, making sure they're not hurting people around them. And then if anything, it's healthier than what it is now. And I'm not saying that's like a fix-all solution, because that's impossible, but I think we'd be a whole lot better off if our egos weren't so big and we weren't raised in such weird ways. Specifically in America, like there's this weird traditionalism fighting with liberalism because of just the way our country works.
Mhm.
And there's a whole political side to that. But the biggest conflict I feel like we have is people trying to hold on to tradition and
the whole
keep
order and chaos
yes,
thing. Which
yes, exactly. Keep the old things where they are, but then there's the other wave of people who want nothing but change and change the old ways and improve the old things. But sometimes that comes with destroying old things to make way for new things, and
maybe sometimes that doesn't work out.
yeah,
Like,
and that's not always the right choice. And I think that's the biggest conflict is like we're progressing way faster than we ever have before. So the gap in generation is becoming larger and larger and larger to where like our grandparents have had an absolutely completely different childhood
Oh yeah.
than we could possibly imagine for the kids nowadays
Mhm.
because of the rapid speed in which we've evolved as a society and even as the world. Like America has turned into something it wasn't 100 years ago, and that itself has an effect on everybody within the country reacts and it acts with each other and how the country interacts with other countries. And it just like there's so many people who believed one way for so long that like it's human biology to not change your beliefs after a certain time. It just
Yeah.
is. Like if you're past 26, that's when you stop seeking out knowledge actively. And that doesn't mean learning how to do stuff. It means like usually after 26, you're pretty set in your beliefs. And it's impossible to change that. You're not going to change a religious person's mind without a traumatic experience to coincide, which is
Or they have some like I think I want to call it an epiphany,
Yes.
where they have some crazy epiphany where it's like, oh, like something
Like,
it's like, whoa.
something opens in their head. And
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying that like religious people need to change. I'm saying like an example of that is the most prominent example I'd say is religion, or even
Well, like it makes sense because through repetition,
Yes.
that's how they became that person.
Yes, exactly.
And like for you to say, I want you to
stop
reverse,
believing.
yeah, I want you to reverse what all those 20 something years of repetition. I want you to undo all that and change. Like when you,
Me as a younger person, I
Yeah.
know more than you, and
Yeah,
it's
like,
like
if
no
you-
one's gonna listen
if
to
you were
that.
to come at someone and say that, they'll piss off.
Exactly.
And that's where then you said like, you know, some traumatic experience. Like this is going back to the whole inward thing.
Yeah.
It would have to come inward from within them to decide to make that change.
Right.
And like another thing that I like that you were talking about, how you were talking about on your deathbed, like, you know, trying your best type of deal.
yes.
Trying to figure it out. What I liked about, like, Zeus talked about it because Heron asked him a question why he did something.
Yeah.
And Zeus just responded with, he's like, even me as a god, I don't always know what the best thing to do is.
Right.
So, oh,
I think that's the coolest thing about Greek mythology specifically is the gods aren't untouchable. They're literally meant to be examples for the men.
that's what I was thinking about it a little bit, how interesting the concept of the gods were.
Mm-hmm.
Because even how they are depicted is like a human.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, it's just like, it's like we're almost one and the same as the gods. It's just like they're so closely related, the man and the god,
Mm-hmm.
in Greek mythology. They got the same flaws as we do.
Yeah.
They got the same wants that we do. They look like us.
Yeah.
It's just like the difference is like one can throw lightning bolts.
Well, and the core idea behind it was in Greek mythology, the gods created man to be greater than themselves.
To learn
And
from their mistakes.
Yeah, learn from their mistakes and create something. And I think that's exactly what happened. If you want to join that school of thought, is like they were created in the God's image and then created a society, and then all of a sudden fast forward to now, and it's
Mhm.
like the thing about the gods in that case were like they don't evolve.
Yeah.
They stay the same for eternity, and they do the same thing, where humans constantly change and evolve and improve.
And that's what I like about it, because with the Titans,
Mm-hmm.
they're Kronos' sons,
Mm-hmm.
Hades, Zeus, Poseidon,
Yep.
were better than him. But, you know, rather than allowing that to happen, they did the opposite of what the gods
Yes.
did, swallowed his sons and tried to
Yeah.
stop the positive change from happening, because like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want that. You know, ended up leading to his death and all that.
Yeah.
But that's what,
Yet
Again-
another lesson.
yeah, another lesson. That's what I liked about the Greeks. Again, like, they're truly enlightened, you know?
Yes.
Truly enlightened. That's what I liked about it in what they promote, is that growth, rather than being like, well, because this literally is going back to our whole kind of like happiness thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't promote the growth anymore, it's like, well, what the fuck's the point now?
Yeah.
It's like
If
I
you-
can't grow now. It's
If you don't change, like, exactly, that's the idea of stagnation, and it's human nature to want to improve at
Mhm.
everything.
Mhm.
And I'd even say it's part of one of the darker sides of human nature is to try to be the best at everything we do. And one of the maturity levels is understanding that you're never going to be the best at everything.
And that's what I love. Like, and again, like the Greek gods show that, because
Mhm.
you know, each god was good at doing its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, like,
It wasn't a god of
gonna-
everything.
you're not going to have Poseidon be crafting something as great as Hephaestus. You know,
Mhm.
it's just, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to have
Fascinating. I
these.
didn't even think about that way. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have like all of those gods are specialized in their own thing,
Mhm.
and they work together.
To create something big.
Like Olympus,
Yes.
they create something good when they all work together. And it's like, hey, what do you know? That's literally how
That's
us humans also
Yes.
go about it. it's not that we had one human be like, oh yeah, I made all this. It's we had a bunch of humans come together.
Everybody contributed
and made something
for the greater good.
Yes, and that again, that's just what I find crazy about humanity. Looking through all parts back on it, like I think at any point we easily could have been wiped out.
Yes.
Before we got technologically advanced.
Yes.
But it's just like we just kept at it.
The persistence.
we just kept at it. We kept working together, and we just figured it out every time. I was like,
dang.
I found that fascinating, and again, I just genuinely do love how much the Greek gods are able to relate to how we are.
And to be fair, I was just thinking about this. There is a possibility that we are only perceiving the Greek myth as modern Greek myth, as opposed to
true.
I guess what we'd say, like the actual Greek myths that were passed around. Because I haven't done extensive research. I've done thorough research on like the stories, but I haven't done.
I think we know more
research
than the common man, but there's obviously going to be one. There's going to be that person that knows more than us.
Like, wow, they're not as great as you say they are.
Yes,
and that's not the point. The point is to inspire people like we have been inspired in that way.
Because you can pull out crazy stories. I remember like one story, Hercules wrestled death to revive someone.
Right,
and it's like so. What are you going to take
lesson?
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck's the lesson? You're going to wrestle death to revive someone? It's like, oh, I don't know.
Right, and there is a really dark one about Zeus and Nemesis, and Zeus himself was not the best example as morality goes, but I think that's the entire point. Is we have taken from the Greek myth stories what has been intended to be taken. So, same exact thing as like the Bible, and people who appreciate what the intention of the Bible is and the stories and what they mean and what they teach you and what they lead you in life with. Same exact thing goes for every religion. I think that's something that younger generations nowadays rag on religion a lot. I'm not a religious person, to be clear. I think I said that earlier. I don't follow any religion. I was raised somewhat religious, but like Jared, it was never super big part of my life. But I have an appreciation for the intention and the function it serves, not even as a society, but as humans. And if there wasn't Christianity, it would be something else. If it wasn't Hinduism, it'd be something else. Like, every single culture has had something.
Yeah. And it's like, it was just kind of like by chances.
Yeah.
Like, I am just more fascinated by Greek culture than I am by learning about Christianity.
And to be fair, we're very exposed to. Oh, actually, you know what you're saying? Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because we're almost all raised. Like, Christianity is obviously the biggest religion in the world.
Mormonism's kind of popular here as well,
right? Which is still Christian. There's like 12 different Christianities, but the point is, I think the reason Greek myth fascinated me personally, and potentially this goes for you too, Jared. It's fascinating because the way it's structured is to fascinate, and the way it's structured is to be very much like a interesting story-based thing with characters that do these fantastical things.
They got badass stories that are fun to listen to.
Yes, and they're meant to encapsulate the imagination, where I'd argue, based on from what I know, the Bible stories are less about fascinating and encapsulating, and it's more about teaching and understanding the past, where Greek myth is very little about timeline, and it's very much about these three gods interacted and this is what happened. These three characters interacted and this is what happened. This character is the son of these two characters, which then gives an implication for what this person's supposed to be. And
I think it is just also the way they went about it, because, you know, like in Christianity, it is one God.
Yes.
Whereas within Greek, it's the gods.
Yeah.
And it is if, like, you know, the Greek stories, like, I don't know why but they're called the epics. Is what the stories are called, and kind of like the Bible, but it's certainly glorified, and I do like it.
Yes.
With the Greek stories, like, they have these crazy tales, but in the same time, I would say they have tremendous meaning, what they're saying in the stories, rather than just simply being
fun little stories.
Yeah, like, rather than just leaving it as, oh, some big titan ate his children, that's fucked up and weird. Rather than just leaving it at that, rather than looking at it, trying to stop growth in that sense. Depending on how you want to view
resist the change.
Yes,
the
resist
next
change.
Generation, like, all of that. So, anyways, sweet. We're back on our actual hour-long episodes. It feels good.
All right.
Because the last ones were super short. So I hope that was a good return to our format.
I liked this episode.
I did too. It was very, I don't know, felt right. But yeah. So if you enjoyed, if you're watching on Apple Podcasts, it'd be cool if you left a review. YouTube, do all the YouTube stuff. I don't need to say it. And yeah, follow us on all social media. We're everywhere on there. I'm not saying we're popular, but we're on all platforms. And share it if you like it. I forget to say that a lot. Jared started that. If you want to recommend it, that would be appreciated.
I think it'd be in terms of our growth, I think word of mouth would just simply be the best.
We hit 125 downloads.
I like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of crazy. And episode 10. And I'm hoping to get, maybe there's more listeners this time because I'm going to be actively promoting it on my Instagram. But anyways, that's it for promotional stuff. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.